Welcome everyone to another exciting chess battle. Today we witness an absolute clash of titans. World number one versus world number two. Magnus Carlsen, the highest rated player in history, takes on Hikaru Nakamura, currently the second highest rated. A serious matchup, full of strategy, tension, and mistakes that decide everything. So without any delay, let's begin. Magnus, with the white pieces, opens the game with c4. Hikaru replies with e5. Magnus fianchettos with g3. Hikaru develops nf6. We have bg2 and c6, preparing the push d5, a very standard King's English setup. Magnus plays d4. Hikaru captures, Magnus recaptures with the queen, and Hikaru strikes with d5. The queen is safe on d4 because the pawn on c6 stops nc6 ideas. Magnus continues with nf3. Hikaru plays the rare ns6, aiming to cover the c5 square, hinting that bishop c5 is coming next. Magnus castles, Hikaru plays bc5, and Magnus checks with queen e5. Hikaru calmly blocks with qe7, offering a queen trade immediately, a bold endgame-oriented choice against Magnus. We get cx d5, qx e5, nx e5, and nx d5. Magnus plays nd3, attacking Hikaru's bishop, and Hikaru retreats to b6. Magnus surprises with bx d5, giving up the bishop to remove the strong knight. Instead of pushing e4, which would leave c2 weak and rook undeveloped, Magnus goes for a safer path. Hikaru recaptures with cx d5, and Magnus plays nc3, giving Hikaru the bishop pair advantage. Hikaru develops with b6. There's a known game with rd1 here, but Magnus instead plays nf4, making this position a completely new game on move 14. Hikaru retreats to bd8, keeping his bishops. Magnus continues with bf4, Hikaru plays be7, and Magnus places a rook on the only open file with rfc1. Hikaru castles, and Magnus places his bishop on e5. Hikaru responds with rfc8, a move he thinks about for 40 seconds, long and 5-minute blitz, while Hikaru keeps blitzing and gains nearly a minute. Hikaru jumps in f4, Magnus plays nb4, and Hikaru returns with nc3, blocking the c-file. We get bg5, bd6, targeting the knight on b4. The knight drops back to c6, Magnus plays rd1, and Hikaru is forced to give up the bishop with bxs4 due to pressure on the d5 pawn. Magnus recaptures, and Hikaru plays d4. Magnus continues with nb5, Hikaru plays rd8, and now the entire game revolves around that d-pawn. Magnus plays rd2, preparing to double rooks. Hikaru defends with rd7. Magnus plays b3. Hikaru continues with rad8, and Magnus doubles with rad1. Hikaru plays a6, pushing the knight to a 3. We get f6, and Magnus grabs more space with h4. Hikaru plays h6, Magnus advances h5. Hikaru plays bg4, and now Magnus has a problem: how to make progress. If he plays f3, the move is disastrous. Hikaru could ignore the h-pawn and push d3, completely collapsing white's structure. If Magnus tries to win the bishop, Hikaru gets dxe2, and after the trades, black ends up an exchange up and completely winning. So Magnus avoids this and plays nc2, but Hikaru simply takes the pawn with bxh5. Magnus finally plays f3, but Hikaru still has d3 available. The position for Magnus is horrible. We get the sequence: rx d3, rx d3, rx d3, xd3, and Hikaru even captures on f3, leaving opposite-colored bishops, but Hikaru is up a pawn. Magnus goes kf2, Hikaru plays bd5, then ke3. Hikaru pushes g5, Magnus plays bc7, and Hikaru improves with ke7. Magnus tries nd4, offering a knight trade. They exchange knights and enter an opposite-colored bishop ending. King captures in bishop to c6. We have king to e3, king to e6, and bishop to d8. So it doesn't seem like Hikaru has all that much. Magnus even saying that, you can have more space with the king. I don't need it. I mean, I can hold this easily. Hikaru plays king f5. We have bishop king to f2. And now comes king to e5. And the position probably can still be played if you just waste a move with something like bishop to e7. But Magnus played a move that almost always wins the game. But in this case, it loses the game. He played pawn to b4, and now Hikaru's position is completely winning. Hikaru plays pawn to f5. We have king e3 and pawn to f4 with check. We have g captures on f4, g captures and king back to e2, and king to f5. And now that b4 pawn is a problem. It's on a dark square and you can easily lose it. So you have to spend the move to defend it. We have pawn to a3 and now pawn to h5. Now Hikaru has two passed pawns that Magnus has to worry about. King to f2, we have king g4 and bishop to b6. We have king back to f5, bishop back to d8 and bishop to b5, putting pressure on the d3 pawn. King e2 and king to g4. We have king to f2, saying, okay, you can have the d3 pawn. I have to give it up, otherwise I'm not going to be able to stop these pawns. But okay, even being down 2 pawns, endgames with bishops of opposite color are very, very often a draw. We have pawn to a4, pawn to h4, and pawn to a5. Now controlling all of the dark squares. We have bishop to e4 and bishop to b6. We have bishop to c6 and bishop to c5. Magnus saying, okay, I'm just going to move the bishop back and forth. If you can win this, then win it. If not, let's just call it a day. But also, Magnus is down to 16 seconds on the clock, and Hikaru is no stranger to flagging. We have king to f5, king to g1, king to e4, king to f2, and pawn to h3. We have king to g1, king to f3, and king to h2, followed by bishop to d7, just nicely defending the pawn. Bishop to d6 and king to e3. We have king to g1, and here just played pawn to f3. And it was in this position on move 62 that Magnus Carlsen resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. And the position is dead lost. What an incredible fight between the top 2 players in the world.